was big news on the world stage right here in New York yesterday. President Trump calling out NATO allies at the UN yesterday over their role in the Russia-Ukraine war. This as his frustration with President Putin has grown.
China and India are the primary funders of the ongoing war by continuing to purchase Russian oil. But inexcusably, even NATO countries have not cut off much Russian energy and Russian energy products, which, as you know, I found out about 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't happy. Think of it. They're funding the war against themselves. Who the hell ever heard of that one?
And we're fortunate to have Energy Secretary Chris Wright join us here on set. Can I play for you the Commission President von der Leyen, who didn't disagree with President Trump on this point?
President Trump is absolutely right. We're on it. We have reduced already massively the gas supply from Russia, completely gotten out of Russian coal, and massively also reduced the oil supply, but there's still some coming to the European continent. So what we do now, we put sanctions out to those ports where, for example, LNG is coming from Russia. And we want to put tariffs on oil supplies that are still coming to the European Union.
Okay, there's a lot of words. Is she saying that they're going to take action?
Yes, they are taking action in Europe to displace Russian energy. Maybe not as fast as we'd like. America stands ready today to displace all of the Russian gas that goes into Europe and all of the Russian refined products from oil as well. So I spent 6 days over there meeting with European leaders, assuring them we have the capacity, we're ready to serve their needs, and President Trump's agenda is peace. And to get peace, we got to starve Putin.
But her proposal, and I get that you might have to wind this down a little bit so you don't punish millions and millions of people, but her proposal is to stop liquefied natural gas, LNG, from coming into Europe in January of 2027. That's a 16-month wind down. You're an energy secretary. Is that a reasonable amount of time?
Good question.
Or does that seem to be extensive to you?
Yeah, our answer, of course, is we can do it much faster, and we should do it much faster. Because that gas that doesn't go to Europe, that isn't sold in Europe, they don't have an ability to move it elsewhere, particularly the pipeline gas. It's just lost revenue for Putin. It reduces his ability to wage war. So yes, our goal is let's move much faster.
Just to put a fine point on that, his revenue is in the billions of dollars from the EU over the period of time that I just talked about. True?
Correct.
Billions.
I think $20 billion.
$20 billion.
$20 billion
over 16
sales.
months.
Oh, it would be more than that over 16 months, but something like that, yes. It's a lot of money.
As President Zelensky was on with Brett Baer yesterday, and he was talking about how one of the issues is, like, how do you finance the war? And the problems that they have in terms of Putin. Watch here.
President Trump understands that we need more pressure on him. There's not enough pressure from Europe. They are our partners, but it's not enough. We need pressure directly on Putin, on their energy network, on their financing system, on banking system, and etc. We spoke with details about it, and we count on sanctions from the United States side.
Okay, so will that happen? You think the sanctions coming?
Yeah, President Trump has been trying every way we can. So yes, he's ready to move on sanctions, but you can't have sanctions from one party. You have to have sanctions from all the parties. If we can get consensus, we can get everyone to go along with us, absolutely. President Trump is ready to put the agenda on. Here's the advantage of his energy dominance agenda and why he won the election. Not just to stop energy price rises in the United States, lead on AI and reindustrialize our country, we can help our allies abroad. We can bring peace and prosperity. Energy is a tool for good.
Turkey still buys Russian oil, right?
They do.
Slovakia still buys Russian oil.
They do.
Hungary still buys Russian oil.
They do.
When did this war start?
3.5 years ago.
3.5 years ago, and here's where we are. Erdogan is in a very interesting position here, right? He's got a war to the north in Ukraine and Russia. He's got a war to the south in Gaza and the Middle East. Yet here he is in town, and he'll be at the White House, I think, tomorrow. And there could be a big purchase that goes through to help the Turkish Air Force. Why can't you get a deal with him to put pressure on him to say, look, like if you want to get your oil from the Black Sea, you've got to go through Turkey, right? The Bosporus Strait.
Yes.
You got to do it. The Dardanelles Strait. Turkey owns and operates both of them. He is critical and key to making sure whether they get the pass or do not.
He is. Yeah, they're an enormous power broker in the Middle East. And so far, they've played both sides. They want to be they're friendly with Russia, friendly with the United States, and yet part of the European Union. I met with Turkish energy officials when we were in Europe. It's the same story there. We can replace all of the Russian energy that comes into Turkey with American energy. They say the right things. They're very interested in doing that. We're continuing those dialogues. But ultimately, that decision comes from the top. That's a political decision. That's between Erdogan and President Trump.
Greg Gutfeld and I had a great time on The Five last night replaying the comments from President Trump about climate when he was there in front of that audience yesterday at the UN. Here's a little bit of what President Trump said.
In 1982, the executive director of the United Nations Environmental Program predicted that by the year 2000, climate change would cause a global catastrophe. Climate change, it's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong. If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail.
I mean, they haven't heard that at the UN in ever.
President Trump gets critiqued for being blunt. But if you speak bluntly, people hear you.
Yes.
Everyone heard President Trump's message. And is climate change a scam? The reaction to climate change? Frankly, it's been a scam. The world has spent trillions of dollars to just make energy prices more expensive, to move jobs and opportunity out of Europe and out of the United States. Doesn't move greenhouse gas emissions, but it harms our countries. He's spot on. I'm glad he was blunt and clear, and that opens a dialogue for the future.
How did the room react to it?
You know, part of the room, of course, loved it. Part of the room was stunned, and part of the room was silent. But everyone was listening. As the other world leaders spoke, there's all sorts of side conversations. I want to hush people so I can hear everything. When President Trump spoke, the room was silent.
Wow.
Everyone listened.
Interesting. With prompter or without. I can guess who hated it, but who loved it?
African countries loved it.
Really?
You know, they've been preached that they can't energize,
Right.
they can't live lives like us because for climate change.
Yes.
I sat next to the Ugandan delegation, you know, the United States delegation. Of course, they loved his sense of humor. They loved his bluntness. I think a lot of the world, maybe not brave enough to cheer like that in his speech, but a lot of people inside said, finally, 30 years of the UN preaching to us about how we can't develop, how we can't follow common sense energy policies.
They don't want to be penalized by someone else's rules.
Exactly.
They want to grow too. They want to have lights on for their schools and their homes. It's been outrageous.
Everyone wants a better life. What do Americans want? Lower prices, better job opportunities, an optimistic world for their kids. The climate movement crushes all those, and it's wrong. It's just wildly exaggerated and wrong.
Loved having you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, and my heart and prayers go out for the victims in the events in Texas. I appreciate your coverage.
At the Dallas ice field facility where there were shootings this morning, and in fact, as the Secretary mentions,